Hello guys, Garcia here, and welcome to Expanding Horror. This is a new playlist on the channel, and in these videos I'll try to come up with new ideas and concepts to expand the lore and the story of a movie that I reviewed, and offer some suggestions for potential sequels and prequels for it. So this particular one is going to be about 13 Ghosts, and this is my third and final video about the movie. So we have already reviewed and reforged 13 Ghosts. So now let's try to expand it to see how a potential franchise based on the material could look like. The structure of the video is going to be pretty simple. 15 ideas for prequels, 15 ideas for sequels, and for each idea I will also state in what type of media I would like that particular one to be explored in. So it could be in a movie format, in a series, in a game, etc. We'll start with some basic ideas that are based in obvious elements that the movie already had and expand those a little bit. And in later suggestions, we are going to branch out with ideas that have some elements from the movie but differ in many levels from the source material, sometimes dramatically so. A heads up, before we move on guys, I am not a native speaker, so I will commit mistakes during this video, but I hope that I can make myself understood and that I can convey my ideas in a meaningful way. And a second heads up. During the video, I'll be comparing several ideas to the ones in the original movie. And every time I say original movie, keep in mind that I am referring to the 2001 version, the remake, not the original 1960 movie made by William Castle. That's it guys, on to the video. So let's start with the ideas for prequels. Number 1, Basileus' story. I would like to see this one in the movie. Probably the most interesting prequel that could ever be made regarding the lore of the movie would be a movie exploring the trials and tribulations of Basileus, the astrologer that designed the machine that is powered by the dead to open the eye of hell while possessed by the devil, or by a demon or some such entity, right? In the 15th century. So who was he? Did he dabble with the dark magics? Why he was chosen by the entity? Did he actually try to build it? Was he working under some sort of patron that used him as a vessel for said entity? When he died, who inherited or stole the Arcanum? A movie answering these and other questions about him would be a must-watch for fans of the original, in my opinion. Number 2, the First Zodiac in a series or in a game. So in line with the first idea, this one could complement or it could be used as a sequel to the Basileus movie. So who attempted to create the First Zodiac? How did they hunt the ghosts? What other magical and sacred items did they create to help them during this extremely risky undertaking? So what about the church? Did kings and queens take part in this search as well? Or funded the operation somehow? And ghost hunters, were they part of the Inquisition? Were psychics viewed as witches too? A series about the First Zodiac in the Dark Ages would be great, but a horror game set in that period with its lore based on the Arcanum would certainly be interesting as well. Number 3, the Arcanum Over the Centuries in a series or in a book. So the book would be the main focus on this one, being moved around the world by the hands and coins of people who want a shot at unlimited power, trying and probably failing to build the machine described inside through the centuries. So in different cultural contexts, in different time periods, and for probably very different reasons, right? So just the Arcanum alone and a reality in which the ghosts exist is already material enough to create great horror stories, in my opinion, situated within the last few centuries. So not only a series with different people from different time periods trying to build the machine would be cool, but a book covering the story of the Arcanum, written by different authors over the centuries, retelling the horrors that they've experienced and exploring different incarnations of the Zodiac would be a great addition to the lore of the franchise. Number 4, Dennis' story in a movie. So it would be very interesting to hear the story of the best character in the movie, in my opinion, and my personal favorite horror movie character ever. So in his final moments in the movie, he confesses to Arthur that he has been searching for a reason to like himself for a very long time. So imagine being a real psychic since your early childhood, and when you finally find somebody that you can be useful to because of your condition, It's Cyrus with his bonkers plan of hellish world domination. So who was Dennis early on? When did his eyes meet with the ones of a ghost for the very first time? Did his family know about his powers? So his story would shine a new light on several of his confessions during his final hours in the movie. Number 5, ghost hunting stories in a series or in a book. So later in life, we know what Cyrus was trying to pull with the machine, right? But what other mystical and profane entities and creatures did he hunt in his younger days? So Arthur states very early in the movie that his uncle was already an eccentric character decades before. So what else was he up to? So a movie telling his story while focusing on his earlier hunting work and how he got the Arcanum and would be a perfect prequel for the original movie, especially if you liked the Cyrus character, right? And a book with short stories written by folks that worked with him over the years would sate our curiosity for sure. Number 6, Spirit Reclamation Business. So this one in a series. So before Kalina betrayed Damon to prove her loyalty to Cyrus, did they free other spirits together? So did they interfere with the capturing process of the other ghosts before the Juggernaut, influenced by Cyrus or not? So how long did they work together before the betrayal? And why and how one becomes a spirit releaser anyway? This is probably the most pressing question. So how many like them are active in the world right now? So does their organization descend from an even older and more traditional one? So given how powerful the Arcanum is, or actually the knowledge that it contains, right? It would make perfect sense that several groups in the world would work in the shadows to obtain it and either hide it for as long as possible or use it themselves, right? Number 7, Cyrus and Dennis on the hunt. This one in a series. So this one is pretty obvious. So how did they catch the other 11 ghosts seen in the movie? How were they chosen? And how many people that worked for Cyrus died in the process? I would imagine a lot. Did they fail to catch a few of the ghosts and decided to look for other spirits that would play the part in the Zodiac on the fly? So how were they able to avoid the authorities and other organizations that probably were interested in the Arcanum during the long process? So this idea in a series format would probably be the prequel that would make the most sense to make, right? For the simple fact that most of its content would basically be canon from the start. And the last episode is basically already in the movie, right? The capture of the Juggernaut. Number 8, Ghost Origins. This one in a series or in a short comic book series. So the other side of the coin, basically. So a retelling of the Zodiac ghost stories that were presented in the Ghost Files DVD extra, but in a more episodic format, about how each person was killed and what they did after becoming a spirit, right? So because of the fact that these stories have already been told in a more condensed manner, a short series of 3 comic books with 4 chapters each would cover all of them just fine, and would have the added bonus of having new and original drawn versions of all the ghosts, right? Number 9, Arthur's childhood in a movie. So during the movie, Arthur tells his kids that his Uncle Cyrus wasn't popular within the family, possibly because of his crazy interests and the fact that he squandered the family fortune. But he also mentions that he met him a couple of times as a kid. So it would be interesting to expand the idea and follow a young Arthur alongside his cousins, lost in another mansion that is also owned by Cyrus, full of occult items and paraphernalia, decades before the Glass House ordeal, right? So maybe even containing a couple of ghosts in the basement. So maybe this eccentric mansion could be his early failed prototype of Basileus' design, and that fail becomes very apparent after the kids wreck the place, right? So you could explain this away in the original movie by showing Cyrus blocking or either erasing Arthur's memory at the end of the prequel, and Arthur slowly remembering everything after seeing a ghost for the first time in the original movie, which in that particular case was the Jackal. Number 10, the Rogue Inquisition. This one in a movie or in a game. So this is a very specific variation of the second idea, the first Zodiac. The original movie doesn't have religious connotations and discussions, other than the obvious ones, right? The demonic possession of Basileus and the Oculus Infernum, the Eye of Hell, basically confirming that the devil exists in this universe, and that was actually very refreshing and a big positive of the movie back in the day. But back in medieval times, religions around the world dominated hearts and minds, occupying a significant percentage of the political stage, right? So in this scenario, a powerful and corrupt pope becomes a tyrant, like some of them really actually were back in the day, and a smaller fraction of the church starts opposing him in the shadows. So creating a new organization to specifically execute their revolutionary plan, opening the Eye of Hell, utilizing the recently acquired Arcanum. So the power disparity is so overwhelming that they conclude that the only power strong enough to dethrone the man who sits the closest to God is to harness the knowledge of his biggest adversary, the devil himself. So this one would be even better as a game, because that particular media has way more time and mechanisms to build a world and also to explore this type of chaotic conflict, right? Number 11, Ghostlycraft. This one in a movie or in a series. So we already know who created the Arcanum and what its original purpose was, but what about the other mystical items present in the movie? So who elaborated the first spells and who elaborated the first chants? Who found out that Mercury could be used against spirits? And how were the earlier Zodiac attempts performed if there were no spectral viewers yet? So basically, how the hell did they see the ghosts, right? So Ghostlycraft would explore the life and work of the creator of the first occult items that would help the first few madmen that attempted to execute Basileus' master plan in the Middle Ages, in the Renaissance, and so on. So basically replacing Quicksilver flares with like rudimentary devices and the glasses with runes and potions. We would learn about this exotic reality alongside his creator until his proximity to the spiritual world proves to be fatal to him. So play with fire. This idea would be very similar to what was done in Hellraiser 4, Bloodline, which told the story of the Lamarchand cursed bloodline, and of the original toy maker that created the original puzzle box, the Lament configuration, which is the device that opens the portal to the Leviathan's dimension in the movie, right? Number 12, Victorian Zodiac. This one in a movie or in a book. So Jack the Ripper is probably the most famous serial killer in the history of mankind, and also very similar to the original 11th ghost in the movie, the Jackal, whose story is that he brutalized prostitutes in the streets of what looks to be England in the Victorian era, or a few years after that. So in this idea, the story would follow a rich young woman whose family falls in very hard times, forcing her to basically become a prostitute. So the individuals who will try to build Basileus' machine enlist the Ripper to kill this lady, who would later become the sixth ghost in this version of the Zodiac, the Angry Princess. So naturally, after she is successfully killed by the Ripper, his patrons would kill him too, for he was chosen to be the Jackal. So what can I say, right? Only God can save the Queen now. Number 13, Titanic. This one in a movie. So this one is also pretty simple. A madman builds Basileus' machine in ship form, and 13 unfortunate travelers were chosen prior to the start of the trip to form the Zodiac after they are killed in the middle of the ocean, basically. So obviously it doesn't need to happen in the Titanic specifically. I use the name just to facilitate the visualization. But a movie using this idea would be extremely brutal. Lots of kills and vengeful spirits exacting revenge on their killers. And also lots of confusion and finger pointing, because the movie would take place in the 1800s. So most people aboard would probably think that the apocalypse just started or something similar, which is actually a pretty good guess in this case. Number 14, the Protestant Reformation. This one in a series or in a book. So the Reformation period in Europe in our timeline here starts approximately a century after Basileus wrote the original Arcanum. So in this version of the story, his ideas start spreading to small fiefs, settlements, and isolated villages in the 15th century Europe. And by the time the Reformation truly starts in the 16th century, a small but loosely organized cult already exists. So they worship the 13 ghosts as the 13 gods, and Basileus as a prophet that created the key that will unlock the cage that said gods seem to be locked in, releasing them periodically throughout Europe. So one half of the cult then starts using dark magic to locate the gods, the ghosts in this case, and gather them, while the other half builds the Ocularis Church, the place of worship in which the ritual is going to be performed. So the story would follow three members of the Catholic Church that are infiltrated in the cult, looking for ways to stop or to delay the entire process, while learning way more about the afterlife than they could ever have wished to know. And finally, number 15, the Apostles. So in a book or in a comic book, because no one would have the guts to make a movie with this concept. So 12 ghosts and the 13th is the final key. 12 runes and the final rune completes the cycle. And 12 apostles play their part in the salvation of mankind by helping the 13th man, who would eventually sacrifice himself to give the gift of salvation to those that follow his teachings. Or so the story goes. I am an atheist, so that's all I know. But if you were the devil himself and wanted to prevent the existential change proposed by Christ and his disciples, you don't wait until the 15th century to do it. So you start in the root of the tree, right? So in this version, enemies of Christ and unbelievers would unite themselves and rally behind the original creator of the first version of the Arcanum, Judas Iscariot, the betrayer and the vessel of the deceiver himself, who would use dark magics and thousands of followers in an attempt to open the Ocularis Infernum and bring his legions to Earth to thwart Jesus' plans and initiate a new era for demons in the hellscape that Earth would become. So the story would naturally follow the apostles, trying to survive assassination attempts while protecting Christ until the time comes for him to sacrifice himself for mankind. I know this is kind of wild, but this is what I came up with. So there you go, guys. 15 prequel ideas based on some of the concepts present in the original movie. As I said, some of them are far removed from the versions we saw in the movie, but the spirit is still there. Now, guys, let's keep going with my 15 ideas for a sequel to 13 Ghosts. Numbers 1 and 2 are sequels based on two original endings that I proposed in my 13 Ghosts Reforged video. So I'm going to retell them here and expand the ideas a little bit more. Number 1, Extra Ending 1. So in this ending, Damon, which was Kalina's partner, doesn't die on the junkyard sequence in the beginning of the movie, and instead dies inside the house. There are a few extra characters, all of which are Critical's family members, and a couple of them are in league with Cyrus. And also Maggie, the character, doesn't exist in this version. So that said, here's how it goes. So Damon's and Dennis's spirit pair up to break the machine, and Arthur protects his kids while the house blows up. But during the confusion, one of the family members that supported Cyrus survives, gets the book, and escapes in Dolores' car with it, alongside the spells and other relevant items to the machine and the Black Zodiac. So this means that this guy can now try to build the machine and can try to recreate the Black Zodiac, or maybe other characters that steal the materials from him or her, right? So what I would do is to have two different secret organizations fighting for the Arcanum, one composed of demonologists and Satanists trying to open the Eye of Hell, and the Critical's family member is one of them, and the other one would be the organization that Kalina and Damon originally worked for, that would align itself with Arthur to find and destroy the Arcanum once and for all. Number 2, Extra Ending 2. So this one also takes into consideration the same changes to the movie that the number 1 idea has, but this is the failure version. So in this second ending, Arthur is thrown into the eye by Cyrus's goons and dies, finishing the whole process, and the eye consumes all the ghosts and open a portal to hell that swallows Cyrus and the goons while the house explodes. So Kathy and Bobby survive, and they are told by Dennis's spirit to run away as fast as possible while looking one last time into the eye and seeing an impossibly deep hole with a faint red glow that is growing larger and seems to be directing itself to the surface alongside the growing chorus of a million voices of spirits that are about to be released. So they get one of the cars and drive away as fast as possible, while Dennis and Damon both promise to protect them from the upcoming hellish apocalypse. So the movie ends with a shot of the car reaching the nearest city, with the spirit of Arthur standing on top of it in his ghostly form, because remember, he dies. So looking at the horizon opposite to where the car is moving and seeing the huge red glow and hearing the ghostly voices getting louder and louder, and then he promises to Jean and to himself that he will forever protect his kids and that he will search for a solution for this colossal predicament, even if it costs him his own eternity. So this is the second original ending, and this sequel would focus on the near apocalypse that started that day, worldwide changes to daily life, and the fight of the entire human species against their own ancestors, and deceased loved ones. So, and also the demons that keep coming out of the eye, obviously. So Kathy and Bobby will be protected by Dennis, by Damon, and by Arthur in their ghostly forms, while they try to assemble some sort of task force to find a way to close the eye while the global production of protective ectobar glass and spectral viewers skyrockets, alongside the institution of mandatory curfews in every major city, during which chants and spells are played on gigantic speakers to repel the ghosts during the night. So kind of a zombie apocalypse scenario, but even more dangerous. And there's also the new and improved Cyrus too. Number 3, Ghost Saviors, in a movie or in a series. So this is basically the simplest idea for a sequel following the events of the original movie. After going through the whole ordeal, the entire Critical's family struggles for a few years to readjust to a world in which ghosts exist. So they are suddenly contacted by the folks that Kalina and Damon used to work for or cooperate with, and are invited to join the ranks because of their first-hand experience on the field. So when they ask why they are being invited right now instead of receiving said invite years earlier, the organization reveals to them that several new cycles around the world got their hands on copies of the Arcanum and are assembling different Black Zodiacs and creating new and improved designs of the machine, and they need all the help they can get. Also, because of the shortage of spirits that can fit in each archetype in the Zodiac, Gene Criticus' spirit might be in danger again if she is still in this world. If this was a series, they could split up, and each family member would be a part of a task force that would try to disrupt different machines in different parts of the world at basically the same time. Number 4, Spirit Reclamation Business, in a movie or in a game. The new generation of Ghost Saviors has its hands full because in the digital age, file sharing is out of control, and it's impossible to know who has access to what and who has the resources and contacts to actually try to build something or enslave ghosts. So in this scenario, the word is out, and several different visionaries around the world are starting the process of building different versions of the machine and acquiring the right spells, while obviously looking for suitable ghostly candidates for their respective zodiacs. So we would follow a group of ghost saviors composed of original characters not present in the movie, trying to disrupt as many machines as possible while freeing the ghosts trapped within each one. So very similar to number three, but this time no critical family members are involved. Number five, Digitalized Arcanum, in a series or in a comic book series. I already talked about this concept in the context of the last two ideas, but this time the focus would be the world at large. So the fact that the spiritual realm exists is now public knowledge. The Arcanum is available online, and thousands of pictures and videos depicting ghosts are published every day in all social media websites. So ghosts become commodities, being hunted, bought, and sold for huge sums of money to serve as prey or hunters in twisted survival contests, to be a part of occult collections, or displayed in ectobar glass cages as status symbols for the rich. So religions around the world condemn the spiritual slavery, but naturally no one cares. And some cults start embracing and promoting the idea. So the search for the spirits of famous people ramps up, while the accidents and deaths attributed to spirits skyrockets all over the world. So in this setting, a lot of different characters could serve as a base for exploring this new reality. So the story could follow ghost hunters, ghost saviors, spiritual zookeepers, exorcists, a group of people locked someplace alongside a few vengeful spirits, cultists, rioters, and etc. Number six, Sanctification, in a movie or in a game. So using the idea 5 as a starting point, the one we just discussed, a new group of exorcists is trained and certified by a recently formed coalition that is comprised of the main arms of the three main Abrahamic religions, which are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Their objective is to take action against spiritual slavery and sanctify the spirits in order to set them free from their earthly existences. So while this is going on, all three religions are secretly capturing spirits themselves, what a shocker, in order to access the Ocularis Infernum and use it to establish their dominance over all other religions and governments, and institute a worldwide theocratic regime using ghosts as a conquering force. So the main characters would be a group of exorcists that also work for their respective religious leaders, secretly, of course, always trying to sabotage each other's work in the name of their faith. Number 7, Mars, in a movie. So basically the Doom route. Scientists start terraforming Mars, and they eventually establish a sizable colony on the Red Planet. The colony is apparently attacked, and all communication is lost. A nearby ship with a group of soldiers is ordered by their general on Earth to land on Mars and investigate what the hell happened to the colony. So it turns out that the small group of engineers that designed the place were actually trying to create a futuristic version of Basileus' design on Mars from the beginning. And they killed and used a few of the colonists as stand-ins for the spiritual archetypes that the machine needs to be activated. So when the ship lands on Mars, the Ocularis Infernum has already been opened, and the colony is crawling with demons and vengeful spirits, and the fight for survival begins. So in the original Doom, in the original game, it was a failed teleportation device or a wormhole that malfunctions, and in this version it would be the Ocularis Infernum, and there would be vengeful spirits alongside the demons. So you can only make a movie out of this, but you cannot make a game because it basically already exists, right? Number 8, spiritual weapons. This one in a movie or in a series. So this one is another variation of the digitalized Arcanum concept. In this one, only a few governments and paramilitary groups know about the Arcanum and the spirits. So the first thing they do is to capture as many as possible, while trying to figure out a way to safely control them to eventually use them as weapons. So the protagonist would be working for one agency of one of the governments that knows about the ghosts, and they would be dispatched to deal with a terrorist organization that was able to capture several extremely dangerous ghosts. So there's also a rumor that they are building Basileus' machine deep underground, but that hasn't been proven yet. So it's more of a thriller that also has supernatural and horror elements in the mix than necessarily an idea for a straight up horror movie. But hey, could be interesting. Number 9, The Devil Returns in a series. So after the events of the original movie, a new vessel is chosen by the devil himself to influence someone to carry out his instructions 600 years after Basileus first wrote them down. So he chooses the young son of a billionaire that made his fortune in the real estate business, that is ready and willing to go through the entire process, receiving eternal life and his son's life back in exchange for opening the Eye of Hell. So he creates a task force, hires a group of psychics, and starts building a complex in the Arctic to serve as Basileus' machine to house the 12 ghosts. So he then looks for a suitable candidate to be the 13th ghost. He doesn't know it yet, but he was already chosen by the devil to be the number 13. And the devil intends to use his vessel, his son, as a bargaining tool in the final stage of the process. So this series would follow the billionaire and his devilish son, prophecy style, alongside the group of psychics navigating the entire process. Number 10, Isolated Complex. So in a movie. So this is a more popcorny idea. A couple of families decide to spend their vacation together, traveling around the Pacific on a cruise for a week. So that cruise will take them to a very isolated island in which a new 5 stars resort opened up very recently. So you know where this is going. The hotel is the machine, and a few of the travelers are about to join the new Zodiac, including one member of each of the families. So there's a few interesting factors on this one. So first one, the hotel has obviously a bunch of floors, so that would force the machine to be designed differently than the original one, built in a vertical pattern instead of a horizontal one. The different floors would add a lot of tension because each one could be a dominion of a particular ghost. The resort is in an island, so there's no escape once the cruise leaves. And potentially hundreds of people would be killed if the ghosts escaped their containment cubes for some reason, right? So which probably would happen, let's be honest. Number 11, the new Arcanum, in a movie, in a series, or in a game. So a variation of the Devil Returns idea, but in this version a rogue demon comes to Earth to possess a world-renowned architect to write a new Arcanum. So his objective is to design a new machine that would be powered by a new and more modern Zodiac to facilitate the spiritual chase. So he's hoping that at the end of the whole process, he would be able to secure the Eye of Hell for himself and start his hellish rule upon humanity. So then, when he's powerful enough to declare a multi-dimensional war on Lucifer himself, he would finally be able to exact revenge upon the original hell from which he was cast out of. So in this version, all of the ghostly archetypes present in the Arcanum would be changed to reflect more modern ways of violently being killed by someone, simplifying the search for Zodiac members. So the story would follow a few members of an organization that is trying to stop the demon's master plan and destroy the new Arcanum before new copies are made. Number 12, Isolated Ghostly Incidents, in a series, in a comic book series, or in a book. Instead of focusing on the Arcanum and the Zodiac, this series would be an episodic collective of short stories about ghost encounters, with the ghosts existing as they were imagined in the original movie. So, a few examples. A doctor tries to escape from his clinic late at night after realizing that the patient that died because of a botched operation he performed is still there. The family of a fallen Templar starts dying in brutal ways after they receive his body in the Middle Ages. Revolutionaries killed during the French Revolution start killing their rivals and their families to avenge their own deaths. German guards in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp are getting killed by what seems to be an invisible force while patrolling late at night. The International Space Station just recorded the unexplained death of one of its astronauts by what was ruled to be an spontaneous human explosion, and the rest of the crew is terrified. A bullfighter was eviscerated in Madrid during an exhibition honoring a recently deceased co-worker, but the images showed that the bull was more than 30 meters away when the bullfighter's guts started to fall on the ground. These and many other concepts could be explored, always making sure to physically show the ghost in the episode at least once in its glorious practical effects made form. Number 13, the ghost mark, in a movie or in a series or in a comic book series. So all of the ghostly archetypes present in the Arcanum were determined by the devil, or a demon, possessing Basileus in the 15th century. So the devil then decided to mark the bloodlines of former and potential Zodiac members with runes of his choosing to give the future generations of machine builders a reliable way of finding specific ghosts for specific spots in their versions of the Zodiac. So in this setting, we would follow a group of ghost saviors that is tasked with protecting four people that have these marks on their bodies. The marks are the runes corresponding to the Bound Woman, the Thorn Prince, the Pilgrimess, and the Withered Lover. They can only be killed under certain circumstances, so they would have to avoid being captured while the Ghost Saviors organization tries to disrupt the construction of the machine by the antagonist of the story. So this one adds a deterministic twist to the concept, so I imagine that most fans would not like this one very much, but hey. Number 14, The Last Resort, in a movie or in a book. A massive 50 kilometers wide asteroid was discovered after being in an obscured part of the sky for many years, and it's headed towards Earth. So the route is predicted and the speed is calculated, and we only have basically a year to figure out what to do. So after a month of worldwide gatherings and discussions, the conclusion is that there's nothing we can do really, because of the sheer size and composition of the asteroid. And exploding it would yield the same overall result, which is human extinction. So the world governments elaborate a joint secret plan based on the occult to use the Arcanum to build Basileus' machine and to create a black zodiac to obtain some sort of knowledge from the Eye of Hell to save mankind. So if it fails, Earth's future belongs to Hell in many ways, and if it works, what will be the price? It's basically Deep Impact with ghosts. And finally, my personal favorite, number 15, the reset button, in a movie, in a series, or in a game. So this is the Lovecraftian alternative story. So in this setting, the world governments know about Cyrus, the Arcanum, and the Zodiac, but the public doesn't. So a group of cultists that has been labeled by authorities as the Cthulhu cult has reportedly started to gather ghosts for some unknown rituals. So detectives specialized in the occult are hired by the US government to find their whereabouts and motives. During the story, they obtain a copy of the real Arcanum, not the one written 600 years ago, but one that has existed for about 14 billion years, written by the caretakers of the blind idiot god Azathoth, when his ancient slumber began, creating the entire universe in the process. So this book also describes the opening of an eye, but not the Eye of Hell. Instead, it describes the opening of the colossal eye of Azathoth in the heart of all creation, and when this comes to pass, the universe and all reality will be obliterated instantly, for these are nothing but a dream from the deep dark. So the opening of the Eye of Hell for the rest of the story then becomes a race between reality and the void, and the final prize is existence itself. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching the first installment of Expanding Horror. Most of these ideas could originate stories that, when compared to the original movie, would have little to almost zero similarities with the source material, but I tried my best to at least always have the ghosts involved in all of them somehow, because they are the real stars of the movie anyway. So this was my third and final video about 13 ghosts, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.